But gather round, my friends, because it's time to ring them bells. The trade bell, Sam Edmonds. Cold sweat.
No, excited. I mean, stuff the finals. This is what it's all about, Gerard. You know what I love when we're just quickly addressing the terms of engagement off the top? We do love a sighting, particularly when we can cross-check phone numbers and it turns out the same number belongs to a truck driver, a cafe owner, a landscape gardener, and a dump truck driver. I love all of those things. And we did cross-check some numbers last year and people were getting very, very cheeky, but that's all part of the theatre.
All right, so take it to the bank as valued. We have our own categories as yes, that's kicking around. No, we haven't heard that, and that's the stuff of fantasy. Yep. I wonder if 6 weeks ago, if we'd started to get texts that said, take it to the bank, Christian Petracca will play elsewhere next year. Or straight swap Christian Petracca for Harry McKay, whether we would have gone, that's the stuff of fantasy.
Yeah. Probably the latter. Or take it to the bank, Christian Petracca wants to be traded. I mean, which is where we find ourselves this morning on the 27th day of August. That would have been the stuff of fantasy. And yet, here we are. So the trade bell, as you touched on, Gerard, has a very pointed nature to it. He wants to leave Melbourne, Christian Petracca. He wants to play for another club. These are the facts as they stand. He wants it to be a big Melbourne club with a big power base and all the resources that sit in and behind that. So over the weekend and into yesterday, he made it clear to the Demons that he wants to be traded with the 5 years remaining on that very lucrative 7-year contract worth more than $1 million a season when he signed it in 2021. Now, Melbourne have been and remain absolutely resolute. This is Gary Pert, Simon Goodwin, Alan Richardson, publicly, privately, to Christian himself. You will not be traded under any circumstance. And yet, for all of that, what I can tell you is that Melbourne aren't even completely clear what his issues are, which is incredible, and what it actually looks like. So depending on who Christian Petracca talks to, it's different. If he talks to the players, his issue is with the leadership at the football club. And when he talks to the leadership, it's some of the players and the off-field stuff at the football club. The brand side of things has always been very important to Christian. His off-field affairs are largely overseen by his lawyer partner, Bella. His brand manager, that's Track 5 Proprietary Limited. Bella took the commercial part of Christian Petracca's contract away from Connors Sports, his management company. And then there's even some who wonder whether his relationship with Ben Simmons on the other side of the planet has a part to play in this as well. Regardless, though, the club is so disappointed, so bemused by it all. They're completely perplexed. They thought it would simmer down, but now it's abundantly clear, Gerard, that is not the case. And some relationships with teammates are going to need some repairing if he is to remain there. There's some real frustration there. Now, they've been with him for a while. They know what makes him tick and what's important to him. But there's been a straining of relationships. That's probably putting it mildly at the moment. So it's hard to believe it's got so far seemingly so quickly.
So what's the next steps?
That's a very good question you ask. Melbourne, as far as their next steps go, that there is nowhere for this to run. That you are staying here. We will not entertain a trade with you. Now, just quickly, just on the trading. So I've touched base with the manager of Harry McKay. This is David Trotter, Hemisphere Management, emphatically shut down any chance that Harry McKay is going to be involved. And he said, look, there's no truth to it anyway. Carlton have told me it hasn't come from them. Melbourne have told me it hasn't come from them. Regardless, he said Harry will not be going anywhere. And Harry is an absolute no, 100%. So the Blues will speak to McKay today just to try to put him at ease, given they're preparing for an elimination final next week. He's signed until 2030. Speaking of mega deals, he signed a 7-year contract of his own with the Blues only a couple of years ago. So as far as Melbourne are concerned, it goes nowhere. The play from Christian Petracca is fascinating from here, though. I'm not sure if he gets away for a period of time, whether he stays. It'd be largely over to his management group now to, I'm assuming, act on the wishes of their client and explore the market and see if they can actually do the impossible. This isn't the Titanic running into the iceberg, though, Gerard. This is the Titanic meeting another Titanic. This is the biggest trade, would be the biggest financial trade in the history of the game.
So can we just revisit what Phil Davis told us on Crunch Time on Saturday? So Phil, we don't label him eminently sensible without good cause. So on Thursday, he detailed his own traumatic injury and likened it to the Petracca scenario, which was so enlightening. And then this is pretty well what's played out over the past 48 hours.
I mean, he's done an interview with the Howie Games, Christian Petracca, that's just about to drop, where he has revealed that he was close to death in the wake of that spleen injury at the MCG. So, I mean, this absolutely goes into the mix in terms of his angst, the way the communication from Melbourne in the wake of that he's a test for finals and we'll see how he goes. And meanwhile, Christian's there close to death, wondering what's going on. But then from the Melbourne point of view, what is true is that here is Christian in the wake of all that, getting away from the club, getting out of Victoria that so upset some of his teammates. And while a lot of the posts are around his business interests and his commercial obligations, there's very little contact with his teammates to say, good luck for this weekend and I'm with you in the fight from afar. Good luck. There was none of that if you speak to people at Melbourne. So there's angst on both sides. Melbourne are resolute that he can be retained and they can swing it all around, but the season going to get pretty choppy. It's 6 weeks is an eternity, isn't it, until the end of the trade period. There is a lot to play out.
Right. So that's going to be the lasting narrative, isn't it?
So that will
usually
continue.
One that takes you the distance. So there we are. How deep would you say the batting order is as we wade into the trade belt?
I spoke to a manager at the start of the season. He said this will be a big trade period. And at that stage, I couldn't quite see it. But now, as I think we stand on the cusp of it, this is. So if you were to line up a batting order of Barry Bonds, Hank Aaron, Babe Ruth and Albert Pujols and maybe Alex Rodriguez as well, maybe Chuck Willie Mays in, I think we bat deep, Gerard. I think we bat deep, which is good fodder for the trade period and these hundreds of texts that are pouring.
It's very hard to keep up as I'm trying to listen to you and read what's coming through. All right, so take us to, so we've opened.
Yep.
Take us to the next.
So it's a pertinent time of the year to start because the exit meetings are in full swing at the moment. And my eyes and ears are drawn to Punt Road where the exit meetings are taking place at the moment. So this is going to come into view very quickly given Richmond's season is over. As I say, its exit meetings are happening now, and the other clubs involved with Richmond players have seen their campaigns come to a close too. So the Tigers have been presented, not all by their own design, of course, but the best chance I'd contend, Gerard, they'll ever get to fast-track a rebuild in a deep and consistent draft this year and into next year too. So this sits with the list manager Blair Harley, who's been in the game for so long, their new recruiter Chris Toche, and a new chief executive as well. So Shea Bolton, the trade request with 4 years to run on a contract worth more than $1 million a season, wants to get back to WA. Fremantle have the picks, 3 first-rounders among them to make it possible. There's him. Dan Rioli, contracted for another 3, wants to play for Gold Coast, and the Suns want him. The Suns also have the picks, 2 first-rounders among them. Liam Baker out of contract, wants to get back to WA as well. West Coast fan as a kid, for what it's worth. That's the most likely of the 3 so far to move. Or really the most likely is probably Jack Graham, who has real security, a 4-year offer on the table from West Coast as an unrestricted free agent. So the Tigers have all these players in play. They've already got pick 1. What an opportunity to set yourself up with the deepest draft, midfield-heavy draft we've seen for some time. There'll be some short-term pain, but there already is pain. And with Tasmania looming large, I'd think you'd want to get this done now. If not all in one draft, then spread over a couple. It's all in front of the Tigers. And they've got enough experience, I would contend, to tread water for a while. Taranto, Hopper, Nankervis, Broad, Bolter, Lynch, McIntosh, Vlosten, Jaden Short and the like to potentially make it happen. But it's all in front of Richmond. I think they've got to grab the olive branch while it's there.
Okay, so Ned from Huntley texts through his Tigers dream trade scenario. Baker to West Coast for 3.
3.
Bolton to Fremantle for 9 and 17.
Yeah.
Rioli to the Suns for 6 and 20. Then Petracca to the Tigers for 3, 17 and 20. Leaves the Tigers with 1, 6, 9, 21 and 22 and Graham stays.
Well, hang on. What's your list build there? I mean, you go into the draft, but then you're bringing Petracca in. And I'm not sure 3 comes back for Liam Baker. But we can have dreams and we can be wildly optimistic.
Just a dream. So where does Tom Lynch sit in all of the Richmond side of things?
Yeah, I mean, a contracted player, clearly. I'm not sure if the interest is there for Tom Lynch, a player who has had his injury struggles, who is well and truly on the other side of 30. Look, I mean, we can throw him into the mix. I've got no knowledge on that whatsoever. And if I was Richmond, I'd fully expect him to be staying at that football club. And I'm not even sure if Tom himself is agitating for change. I know there's been a bit of smoke around that and a few murmurs. But I think Richmond have got enough going on at the moment that we can deal in with facts before we talk about Tom Lynch. But we'll see how that pans out. Just a former Tiger I want to mention as well, Ivan Soldo. I watch on him at Port Adelaide. This is a curious one.
Oh, can I actually, just before you read that, can I read this one? Yes, best time of year, trade bell time. I'm going early. Ivan Soldo, St Kilda Football Club. Partner not happy in South Australia. Moved to Moorabbin to pair with Marshall. That could be on the cards. Not quite a take it to the bank, but a watch this space.
No, it is an absolute watch. So he hasn't even been there for a full season yet, Ivan. So he's got a level of disenchantment 1 season into his career at Port Adelaide. He's battled a knee injury initially. And then he was dropped for round 15 and has now lost his spot to Jordan Sweet. So that's one to definitely keep an eye on. Hasn't quite worked out for him at Port Adelaide. And this text, Tom Lynch being chased by the Pies, take it to the bank, it's on.
Take it to the bank.
So
we're not just ringing the trade bell, we've got the fire alarm going as well.
Sense of theatre in here, isn't there? I thought that was my computer blaring.
Sirens are wailing. Lights are flashing.
We don't evacuate for the trade bell.
Oh,
okay?
no,
we stay.
we're going right
This place
through.
will burn down before we leave, Gerard.
We got through an earthquake that day, Sam. We never flinched.
That's it. Can I try or at least attempt to put some North Melbourne supporters at ease? There's a lot of texts coming through. LDU, definitely gettable. Take it to the bank. And please, please tell me LDU isn't going anywhere. Jungle Drums are beating, apparently. I don't have him here because I think that's the exact opposite of what's going to happen. He's a free agent, at least at the end of next year. That's when he's eligible. I don't expect him to be going anywhere. In fact, I've heard the exact opposite. So I think if you're a North Melbourne supporter, you can breathe relatively easy. I think Luke Davies-Uniacke will recommit to that football club. That's everything I'm hearing anyway.
Okay.
So, Ivan Soldo, we've discussed. Jake Stringer pushing hard for 2 years. The Bombers wanting to offer one. I think he gets the two, but this is always a fascinating watch, the Jake Stringer contract negotiation. I think he's going to get the two at Essendon. Not sure what Bombers supporters, how they feel about that. Initial conversation was one, pushing for two. I think he's going to get the two. Nick Haynes played at the weekend for the Giants. This will be his last season at the Giants, though, ahead of a move to Carlton as an unrestricted free agent. This one should happen, absolutely no issue. And then what do the Blues do? So Matt Owies has kicked the third most goals for Carlton, Gerard. Can't get a new deal. In fact, the Blues won't even enter into negotiations with him. He's kicked 33 goals this year in the home and away season, comfortably the most after Curnow and McKay. But list spots are so tight here. The Camporelli twins are coming in. There's an uncertainty around the cost on draft night for them. The cap is tight there. So he's being made to wait, Matt Owies, like others have in the past. He's almost like the kid left without a chair when the music stops at kindergarten at the moment. So Kayla Marchbank, Jack Martin, David Cunningham, they're all out of contract and facing uncertain futures. And how GWS play their off-season is fascinating, not for the first time as well, given the abundance of talent there that comes in. So Harry Perryman, a few texts coming through on him, Gerard, on the 40 Wings temper. Unrestricted free agent. Is finding it very hard to justify staying at GWS. And he'd like to stay at the Giants because he loves that football club, but it's not making a lot of commercial sense at the moment. Hawthorn are at the table here, but if I was betting on this, I'd say Port Adelaide, if he does leave is the destination. Now, the Giants have upped their offer to 6 years, but the finances aren't what they appear. There might be some triggers or such in there. It's weighted. And Port Adelaide have also come late to try and snare Isaac Cumming, Harry Perryman's teammate. But the Crows in the box seat for Isaac could be as much as a 5-year offer from the Crows. Again, he wants to stay at the Giants. The Giants want him to stay, but they've been wary of matching any Adelaide offer there given the injury history for Isaac. And I think the Giants at this stage have gone to 4 years, but potentially no more. And they've got guys like Angwin and Stone, first-round draft picks from a couple of years ago. Brent Daniels, I'm hearing, close to a new contract post-2025 there as well. So there's a bit happening at the Giants, but at Adelaide, shaping up to be a very active trade period when you factor in Lukosius and Alex Neil-Bullen as well.
Your Lukosius story holds up well from a long time ago. Is how far, is that take it to the bank material?
Yeah, I think it's not an institution and not a piggy bank, somewhere in between perhaps, Gerard. We did raise this back in April, and in the sense at that time that several rival clubs knew he was gettable, and it's played out exactly that way. It all, of course, went nuclear when he was dropped, but it was in train already. My information is the Suns would facilitate a trade for him. His contract until 2026, so it's going to have to be the right trade. This is not going to be a Jack Bowes situation. They're going to have to give something back the other way. But, of course, another club, if it is Adelaide, it's a lucrative couple of years to run, but you smooth it out, and the Suns take an early pick back the other way. The Suns, of course, as we know, wouldn't mind making some room for Daniel Rioli coming up from Richmond. So Neil-Bullen, Lukosius coming, all on the hit list for Adelaide. Looks good on paper. Can they make it happen in reality? Adam Tomlinson, just want to quickly mention him because I know he won't be on your running sheet. Set to leave Melbourne as an unrestricted free agent. More opportunity, just wants to play. I think he's about to turn 32. Is St Kilda set to be his third club? And then we get to the Saints and how they can try to entice people to their footy club.
There's multiple texts around Membry the other way. What do you know about the Membry scenario?
Well, what I love is this text message that dropped from someone whose name popped up on the 40 Wings temper, but this is all part of the theatre of the trade bell, Gerard. In capital letters, anonymous. His name is underneath, but we won't read that out. Anonymous, take it to the bank. Tim Membry signing a 3-year deal with North Melbourne. Now, we know Alistair Clarkson's been bullish on wanting some more key forward. I wouldn't say Tim's a key forward, but hybrid forward perhaps. Support for Nick Larkey and co. and Charlie Comben, who's played there along the way. He comes for on the cheap, of course. Maybe Tim Membry to Arden Street.
Fletcher's got Membry to Collingwood.
Right.
What it's worth. That's proper trade bell material. All right, so St Kilda. It starts with the Josh Battle scenario.
Yeah, so this is so fascinating. It'd be a shock if it's not Hawthorn. Unrestricted free agent, 25 years of age, 6-year offer from the Hawks. Sam Mitchell, as we know and spoke about many times, has really driven this, taken on a real hands-on approach and not for the first time. And interestingly, at the weekend, in St Kilda's last game, of course, he put the request in earlier in the week to take his daughter through the banner for the last home and away game when it wasn't a milestone game for him. So I think it would be an enormous surprise if Josh Battle doesn't join Hawthorn, as it would for Tom Barrass, who's been bubbling away for months, maybe even years now, has 3 years to run on a deal at West Coast. But it is actually this deal and the restructuring of it that has upset the apple cart here. This is a really strange one, but the defender's decision to reject Sydney's interest twice, but most recently last year, was made due to a combination of things. Loyalty to West Coast, of course, family reasons, logistical reasons at play. But he did take less money to stay than he would have got to leave. But there are undertakings after that will look after me. Let's scratch each other's back here and look after me in the aftermath. There was a change in administration in that time. Yep. The restructuring hasn't been to the standard or to the levels that Tom Barrass wanted. He wants a 5-year deal, so another 2 tacked on. This is where Hawthorn have come in. The Dogs are also there, but they believe they're coming second now by a fair margin to Hawthorn, who could get Battle and Barrass into that back 50, which would be huge alongside James Sicily.
Yes. So we had the Josh Battle will announce Hawthorn this week, take it to the bank. Yep. That's from Paul. So highly unlikely while teams are still active that someone tips their hand going that way?
I think so. We do this silly little dance, which I don't quite understand, but history says that that these things don't become public until both clubs are out of the equation. So that's what makes Richmond a watch at the moment, because not only are they out of the equation, but obviously so too are both Perth clubs, Gold Coast, Adelaide and everyone else. But yeah, Hawthorn, while they're still in the mix, you'd expect nothing to become at least formally tabled in that time while they're in the finals race.
All right. So we have our favourite category is that's the stuff of fantasy.
Okay.
All right. So
I'm bracing myself.
Zach Butters to St Kilda for 3 first-round picks.
Yeah. Fantasy, isn't
Welcome.
it? Welcome. You're welcome here anytime with that sort of contribution. Absolutely.
Norton for Petracca. Who says no?
Yes. Love it. Probably Melbourne, but we'll see.
Welcome in.
Welcome in. Long-term contract, Aaron Norton too, by the way.
Bailey Smith, there's a lot of requests.
Oh, there is too.
Front.
Yeah, I mean, I think a bit like the Josh Battle situation, you'd be absolutely staggered if it was anyone other than Geelong. And it has
Does this take us back about 15 months?
I reckon a year and a half, I was going to say, when Geelong were the major players in this space in terms of just starting the process. And for players like this, this is what it takes. This is what it takes to get players like that out of football clubs. So this is a year and a half. Who knows? That's when I became aware of it. Maybe even goes further back than that this has been in train for. And it's about to come to fruition, I think. And he'd slot into a wing, I'm assuming, down at GMHBA Stadium.
All right.
Which is very big.
Just draw breath for a minute. I'll try to keep up with this smoking machine. I should also say that for the longer convoluted trades, which we do encourage, it's Whateley at sen.com.au. And also, if you feel like you haven't been heard because this screen spins at a frightening rate, Whateley at sen.com.au. We check the emails rather thoroughly.
And in the past, the emails have proven to have a relatively good strike rate, I think, from Tom. So if you want us to follow up on something, this is absolutely key.